All right, want to welcome everyone to today's topic, marketing like a top tier agency. We really appreciate, I think we've got over 100 registrants, and hopefully the same will pan out for our attendees today. And that would be great because we have a great presenter in Cabot Risk Strategies joining us. Our goal is really to talk about marketing, but instead of me jumping on here as president of Agency Revolution and saying why marketing matters, I think we need to hear it from our independent agency channel instead. Actually, I know we need to hear it. And so we have guests on today, and we'll walk through what Cabot Risk Strategies is doing in order to be able to help grow and retain business using marketing really as a backbone to the business. And what's great about this is our guest, Joe Callahan, President and CEO, and Hank Morse, Vice President of Communications, provided some great sample materials, because if you've seen me present, I really like to show the how instead of just pontificate on the why. I think we get too caught up sometimes in the why. And so Joe and Hank have some questions that I've put forward, provided some cool samples for agencies to be able to hopefully take some ideas away from this and implement it within your business. So before we jump in, get started, and show you the agenda with questions, I'd like Joe, maybe for you to kick it off and just tell us a little bit about your experience in the space and Cabot Risk, if you don't mind.
Thank you, Jason. It's a great pleasure to be with all of you. And so Cabot, we formed Cabot in 2006. We had the opportunity to move away from a very well-known national broker platform. And it was an opportunity for us to set up a boutique offering, very much more emphasized in the risk management consulting space. But in order to really make that that business model sustainable, we very much wanted to move in a retail offering. So we had some tailwinds with us with the consulting practice. We had 32 individuals join the startup and then run it forward. You know, more than 15 years later, we're very close to 100 employees and just shy of $20 million of revenue, both commissions and fees. As much emphasis as we've put in growing our retail offering, our consulting offering has grown with as much success. I would say to you, this is a really a wonderful opportunity for us to describe some of the things that are working for us. Simply because if we were just a dedicated risk management consulting firm, our approach to marketing would be very different. And if we were 100% all retail, our approach would be different as well. So taking those two business models, melding them together and creating a marketing platform created really some nice challenges, but also some innovative ways for us to think about how we expand our client base, how we expand it into different distribution channels. And so we brought Hank on board. Hank really comes from a very strong media background. He's a heavy lifter, very well known in the Boston market. And so we had the opportunity to bring Hank on board. And the way we're approaching marketing really is very different than we were 24 months ago. So this is a wonderful opportunity, and thanks again for having us.
Thank you, Joe. And Hank, to build on that just a little bit, something that I'm excited to discuss is, because you're coming from the media side into the insurance agency spectrum, there's probably things that are interesting across other industries that you've seen, and we'll get to some of those questions, but anything you want to add to that introduction?
Well, again, Jason, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. And part of why we're seeing some great growth is part of the great things that Agency Revolution have been able to help us with.
Thank you.
In regards of email broadcast campaigns. Maestro is a terrific product, you know, your white glove service. And also the new Forge 3, the website with the clickable ability that allows us to pre-sell really clients who come and take a look. But you know, the strongest way to build awareness and name brand, right, is still word of mouth, but it's very difficult to do. So one of the things, going back to radio, so radio, you've got this this big broadcast platform, but we also needed to figure out, like, the digital world had changed. People they had different ways of connecting, whether it's like listening, you know, going way back in 1969, Ford came out with the 8-track tape, right? So you've always, for almost 50 years or over 50 years, you've had alternatives to listen. Well, as radio moved forward, but the digital world surrounded us, whether it was using your iPod or, you know, your smartphone, your desktops. Now people were going on YouTube, and they were going to podcasts, and they were listening to digital music, and it kind of evolved. And, you know, radio was trying to keep up, and they decided, well, one of the ways we want to keep up is through social media. All right, because if we tell people some of the interesting things we have coming up, they may not be listening to us, but if they see us in social media, we may draw them back, right? So they really attacked social media from day one. Facebook, Twitter, now X, Instagram, not so much Snapchat. LinkedIn was a big one. Twitter for a while would really drive traffic. And so here at the agency, there was, when I came here, they did have a Facebook presence and a Twitter presence and a LinkedIn presence, but it wasn't quite to the point where we are now. So the first thing I did when we came here was try and build those up, make them a little bit more robust. No, not reinvent the wheel, but just boost them so that we're using some best practices in terms of frequency of publication, when you would post, the types of things that we would post. You know, we had a situation where we had a lot of financial information that isn't right in our sweet spot. It's related to what we do, but we wanted to really target those things that we're best at. You know, in the retail side, very strong commercial presence, right? And talk to some of the things that affect businesses. Like, let's face it, rates have gone up significantly. You've had, you know, catastrophic weather issues that have led to increases in premiums and what have you. And one of the approaches we took is educating the client. Okay, they're going to go up. They want to know why. You know, it's not like it's just for us, not for just our clients in our agency, right? But sometimes people need to be told. So that was one of the things that we did. So we'll talk to them on Facebook. They can talk back to us. We try and use Twitter to drive them, and we'll go with better graphics to maybe capture their attention to deliver our message on Instagram. We've also gotten in its infancy on TikTok. My kids, who are 26 and 27, they couldn't believe I was on TikTok. And when I explained to them that their grandfather is also on TikTok, they weren't very happy, right? But I would say in the last 6 to 9 months, I can't believe how much corporate America has embraced TikTok, because it is an enormous source of eyes and ears, right? So we've also used video now to try and tell some of our stories. So that was one of the entrees when I first got here. Before I got here, I had done some consulting work with Joe and with Cabot, because Joe said, listen, we need to grow our retail side of our business. And up until this point, you know, they had been focused really on that consulting model, but their retail presence had grown quite a bit. But more people needed to know about Cabot Risk Strategies. So we enlisted the help of WBZ Radio, AM 1030, one of the great heritage news radio stations in America. We're lucky we're right here, 7 miles from downtown Boston. But they've got an enormous signal. They've got legal 38 state coverage, right? That means the FCC recognizes their signal in 38 states. They get into Canada. So we developed a campaign basically just explaining what the agency is and what we do. And it wasn't so much as, we always want the phone to ring, okay? But it was a brand builder for us. Let's tell people who we are and what we do.
Let me, because I do want to get to that, because you gave us some samples as well to be able to capture how you've basically taken a couple different marketing channels and went forward with that campaign where you were introducing Joe. So I want to show that. So let me get through a couple of these topics so we can set the scene for everybody, because you are already giving us a wealth of knowledge and information. So the topics for today: the importance of marketing for independent agencies, which is kind of, very high level discussion, which you've already kind of set the scene. But then digging into some of those strategies and tactics, and we want to focus on a couple of things you've done in the community, as well as what you've done from a digital marketing presence and why that's important. And then some of the habits outside the industry that maybe you see or think, you know what, it's just a matter of time before insurance starts to embrace it. So maybe Cabot is bleeding edge on some of these tactics and strategies. We want to know about that. And then ultimately, maybe some of the, if you could foresee in the future, a lot of people talk about AI. Actually, we were at a baseball event together, and a lot of the agencies were discussing ways that they're using AI in very quick hit win ways to build content for their sites or for their producer scripts. And so just maybe get a little bit of that out of you before we close in this half hour. So let's jump in. And then I think, Hank, this really it sets us up nicely. But let me hear first, Joe, from you. Why do you believe marketing is important for an insurance agency? If you gave me the top 2 reasons.
Well, I would just say, today we're in a different environment. Predominantly, Massachusetts did not have direct writer competition, and now we do. And so the competition we have is coming from a whole different variety of challenges. And so we're not, think back the way the business model was 20 years ago. Business and technology has evolved. I think we can't be afraid of it. I think we have to embrace it. I really did not have the expectations that we would have this holistic approach that we've embarked on in the last 6 months, which is it's dynamic. It has a lot of dimension to it. It isn't one single source solution. It encompasses a whole variety of strategies. So it's really important. And if you think about how different, I have one client that represents half the revenue of the business, and I have personal lines clients that represent maybe a couple $100 of revenue per client. So the variety of spectrum of our service offering appeal, we have to have a marketing plan that supports growth, and we've had tremendous growth. But we also have to be thinking about how do we adapt ourselves to evolve with the changing environment.
I appreciate that answer, Joe, and it continues to hit on what we're hearing in the industry right now from a PR perspective. The hard market is driving a lot of decisioning, and it starts to really compress, I think, at the agency level, because you have things happening with rates, markets shifting, or in some cases, business just pulling out. And so at the end of the day, the agency is left to educate the client, basically set an expectation that it's going to be a bit rocky right now. But we as the agency have the ability to get you through that through the advice that we provide, as well as then solutions, technologies that you might have to create efficiency gain. And Hank, you were touching on this a little bit around the hard market. And so I'm going to put this one out here for you, because it does help lead into where you were going with your multi-channel marketing approach. So how do you integrate digital marketing into your overall marketing strategy? What online channels and platforms do you utilize to reach and engage with your target audience? And what I want to do is set you up for this is you started with this I Heart WBZ radio campaign where you're highlighting Joe. Joe has a minute and a half basically of talking about the business. And then Joe, you even mentioned the nonprofit niche that you have and being able to help customers in that particular realm. And so Hank, if you could explain how this piece, when setting us up within the radio space, then took you into Instagram and took you into your website and marketing automation, communication, everything matched. What was the strategy there, and how did you execute tactically?
Well, like I had mentioned earlier, when we started with WBZ, yes, you want the phone to ring, but it's really a brand builder. You want people to be familiar with who you are. And so we strategized with a couple of different things that we would talk about. We would talk about Sometimes we just talk about the commercial capability. Sometimes we would talk about the TPA aspect of our business, or we would talk about maybe the personal lines aspect. So a little bit of education. Radio is frequency. It's all about consistency. You don't want to go for 3 months and then disappear. It's always about staying in the conversation. So we would do a week on, a week off, a week on, a week off with our campaign. And as we got further along, Joe is an impressive guy, not because he's my boss, but I've known Joe for decades, let's put it that way, okay? And I know what type of person he is, and he's somebody who does the right thing. The other thing is Joe has really invested heavily in people. When people like to talk about technology, technology can really help you, but you need people. If you don't have the people with the technology, my opinion is you're gonna fail. So Joe has always recognized that, and he's always been somebody who wants to lead from in front and not behind, which is hard to do sometimes, especially in this market where people for the first time in a long time are going back out to say, listen, we're going to put some of our business back out to bid because now the price is so important. So as we develop Joe really as a personality on WBZ and people get to hear him, and you can hear in his voice the love he has for his company, but what he thinks are the right thing to do. And WBZ recognized that because they have a lot of business partners, but Joe is one of the select few that they chose to do a spotlight on. And they call it CEOs You Should Know. And the president over at iHeart in Boston, Alan Chartrand, who was a guy that I had worked for in the past, he invited Joe in, and he and Joe did a show, and they narrowed the feature down. And so then what they did is they took that 1.5, 2-minute feature with Joe explaining the full capability of what Cabot Risk Strategies can do and how we can help. The whole approach is, how can we be of service to you? How can you let us take a look at your business, and how can we help you in your business be more profitable, how to grow, maybe have a safer environment, depending upon what the situation is. And that was pretty impressive. And they ran that across the 8 stations in Boston, which included WBZ, WRKO, which is a legendary talk giant, KISS 108, which is one of the oldest contemporary hit radio stations in America, the iHeart music festival that they run, that was based off the model created by KISS 108. So you've got a lot of heritage stations. WZLX, you've got Country 99.5, right? The Bull. And they ran this across their broadcast platform. We get a very good response from it. In order to enhance that, you also realize, okay, not everybody's going to be listening to WBZ. Boston's a big place. 750,000 people live here, but there are probably about 4 million people in the metro. So then we took it and we put it on our platforms, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and we post them in their various forms. You have to tweak each one so you're using best practice. Like Instagram is very visual. Joe's a handsome individual. He's well dressed, so it wasn't like we were afraid to feature him right there. And then we would send them. Now we use Linktree instead of saying, hey, check out in our bio, there's, check the, you can log on, because on Instagram, you can't use links unless you pay for them. So, and then on the other platforms, we would push ahead of time this CEOs You Should Know, but then we would also tell our customers when we were going to air on WBZ so they could listen. And we've gotten a terrific amount of feedback. Now, one of the things that's been very helpful is the website. When Forge came along, we decided, okay, this is what we want to go to, because digitally it's much more interactive. We want people to come to a place, let's face it, insurance isn't talking the World Series. It's very important. You don't go by a thing in your everyday life that doesn't need some insurance, right? But it's a little dry. People don't want to spend hours doing it. So when you get some attention, you better have something that holds them there so that they can see what your capabilities are. So with the Forge website, what we have found is we're getting more and more people coming to us because of the radio campaign, because of the outreach we do on the social media channels, And now when they come to our new website, cabotrisk.com, by the way, if you'd like to check it out, they've got this slick website that looks beautiful, very interactive, easy to use. It's a home run. And with the new interactive graphic and the ability to click on different highlighted areas, it really is it's almost like a pre-sell for a customer. If they're looking for home or auto and they go and they look under that insurance and they go through the interactive graphic, it'll expose them to potential risk like maybe they hadn't thought about. Oh, well, we've got a pond or a stream in our backyard. Oh, geez, we got to think about that. Oh, what about, oh, we got a trampoline in the yard. You know, a lot of different things. So when they eventually contact us, they've pre-sold in their mind that these are things that they're willing to think about. We don't necessarily have to expose them to them. We will if they don't ask, but some come ready with questions and ask ahead of time. And that's a prepared client, potential customer is a great customer to have.
So what did you, basically part of this is very intentional too, to demonstrate that throughout this journey, like we continue to see the same visual, relatively same content, but to your point, depending on social platform or website or whatever, you've got to manipulate it so that it fits that forum. But what you've done here is carried through consistently across social channels, website, radio is what you started with, which is, I'm glad you're discussing it, because we can't forget about those things that all agencies are probably dabbling in, whether that's newspaper, high school, football games, sponsorships, doing radio. Like it started there, but to your point, you're multi-channel. So when you went into pushing out communication, you followed really the same visualization that they would see if they hit that radio site, or if they hit your website, or if they came across some of your social posting. And, you know, I looked at that campaign, I pulled it forward, you targeted 3,000 some individuals. The delivery rate was high because Joe is a likable guy and there's information to learn about Cabot in a more humanized fashion. The open rate's 52.1%, which is ridiculous. I think rule of thumb in our space is maybe in the 20s. So the ability to be able to attract and get your clients to be interacting with you, you did that through pushing through marketing automation. Anything else you can share about that experience or what you're trying to achieve?
Well, a couple of things is that through Agency Revolution and Renaissance Alliance, which is our partners, they really strive to help us succeed. And for instance, Liz Miskovich, who works at Renaissance, and Gene Klein, they interact very well with Agency Revolution. And they know best practice when it comes to these, well, called broadcast campaigns, these email blasts that we'll do to our client base. We'll send them to sometimes our just commercial lines, sometimes our employee benefits, some we'll send to all of our clients. And the right way to set them up is very, very important. Now, one of the things that Joe has always strived for, long before I got here, was the fact that you always need to be delivering the same message, right? No matter if it's Facebook or Twitter or it's WBZ radio or it's an ad somewhere, you want a consistent message that's going to tell you the same things, like we're insurance, employee benefits, and risk management solutions. We want that in everything we do so that people will know our full capabilities. Then we can do a deeper dive into some of those things that we have expertise in. So with Maestro, which is an outstanding product, and for instance, we did an email campaign with a bigger company at one time, and I will have to say, and I led the way with it, and it didn't succeed as greatly as that I had hoped. And we had beautiful graphics and what we thought were terrific marketing terminology and good sales terminology. What I found out was there are people that know a heck of a lot more about it than I do. And so we were lucky when I brought this query to Liz at Renaissance, who works so well with Agency Revolution. She said, oh, the key to email blasts and email marketing is you can't have too many colors. You can't have too many graphics. There has to be relatively simple fonts. It's got to be a simple message, or you end up in spam, which I didn't fully realize. So one of the great things is recognizing people who are smarter than you are. And I was at least smart enough to know that, right? And so she, with her work with Agency Revolution, really exposed us and helped us refine quickly how we do these email blasts. And then we've been able to use them effectively. And the whole thing is to always draw them back and cycle them back to our website, cycle them back to social media. And now with the new website, we keep them longer than we ever have because they're engaged. There's something for them to do, and it's interesting, and they're learning.
So I'm going to leave this as a backdrop as I ask maybe one or two more questions because we're coming to the top of the hour. The whole point of this is exactly what you just said, Hank, which is to think about that client engagement side and the ways that you communicate and interact and review, renew your policies, all the way to making sure that your site is helping to collect more data, to push that back, and you have some kind of repository in the end, whether that's a management system or through your relationship with Renaissance, having that one place with all data kind of coming in and out, and then solutions reacting to that data. It's very important, and it helps on the prospecting and sales side. But Joe, maybe if you could help me understand, when you think about marketing, communication, education to your customer base, and retaining that customer and maybe even driving some employee satisfaction, marketing being kind of at the forefront of that. What are your thoughts around how you can use messaging, communication in order to be able to retain those great employees that you have, as well as your existing customer base when you have this kind of machine operating on your behalf?
I would say, Jason, the unintended outcome was something Hank mentioned right away, and that was the initial at the onset, the initial goal was to build brand. I can't, it's beyond comprehension how the brand has just taken off because of this integrated platform. The Cabot recognition from every different client we have is across the spectrum. We've built a business on a model where we've always had a high retention because it was more about the relationship and the solution than it was just growing for the heck of growing. But this whole process has just added a dimension to the relationship with the client, existing clients, but also new clients. And then, you know, our business got built on referral business. That's just how it was. But now that we are the scale and scope that we are in the marketplace, we needed to do something to take us to the next level. And so this model, it's evolving every day, has taken us to that new level.
The other thing, if you don't mind me interrupting, is Joe has always gotten the fact that you need to be involved in your community. Right? When you go out and you get involved, you know, we have offices in Woburn and Billerica, and you get involved with the community, whether it's going on a community walk, a fundraiser. We just supported this, one of our clients had a back to school backpack drive where they bought, you know, 500 backpacks and back to school supplies. They're expensive, they're a lot of money. And so even quietly, Joe has always invested in that. And with our involvement, we've gotten into, you know, just community involvement, not for the sake of promotion, but the sake of doing the right thing. And the employees like to do it, and it feels good. Pine Street Inn, you know, the biggest homeless shelter in New England, is one of Joe's clients and has been for many, many years, 20, 25 years. And we do days of service where our clients, our employees will go over and they'll volunteer for a day. They work in the kitchen. And they work beside some managers. They also work beside some people who have lived at Pine Street because they were homeless and are now going through a food training program. And now they're getting ready to move out on their own. So number one, it's very beyond money. You have to help people. And Joe has always recognized that. And that's also one of the tenets of what we like to do.
Well, I really appreciate both you, Joe, and Hank for shedding some insights and looking at ways to communicate, educate, market to prospects and customers, and do that through the civility that you've provided to the state of Massachusetts, and also the relationships that you've built, including the relationship with us. So really, again, the goal for our sessions is just to hear from agencies that are mixing in that technology, that digital marketing, and all the facets of how you can get yourself out there from a brand perspective and a product perspective. But at the end of the day, the reality is in the use cases that are being shared in these discussions. So Joe, Hank, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you both.
Thank you for the opportunity, and thank you to the other the agents that are on there. And if they have good ideas, we don't have all the ideas, and we're always willing to listen to other ideas, and we do have to go on and further expand. So we're always open. If you'd like to get in touch, my name is Hank Morse, hank.morse@cabotrisk.com. And Joe?
joe.callahan@cabotrisk.com.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, folks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.